Hi, my name is Deborah and I'm a professional astrologer practicing Western and Vedic techniques. And we are going to be talking about predictions from the new moon, the 21st of October to the 20th of November. This new moon is happening in the sign of Libra at 28 degrees and is ruled by Venus. She is in Libra, she is in great dignity. So we have a sort of welcome relief from last month's new moon experience, last month's eclipse intensity. And it's kind of starting off with a light-hearted note. This new moon is about creating harmony, it's about creating balance, and I'm not saying that things aren't going to be difficult or there's not going to be chops and changes this month. There definitely will be a lot of fluctuations, but I just don't think that it's got the same level of intensity, let's say, as the eclipses last month. I usually advise on this video to read by rising sign, and while most of the video is going to be done by rising sign, I have included a little bit of information by sun sign. So if you don't know your birth time, but I felt like there was something relevant for a Taurus Sun or a Cancer Sun, I will link it in the timestamp and you can go ahead and look for it. So just a little bit of extra information for you. The first thing about this lunation is that there's no planets in Earth. We do have the South Node in Virgo, but it's not a real heavenly body. And most of the planets in the new moon are going to be in air and going to be in water. So we're going to be very mentally stimulated, and we're also going to be very emotionally stimulated. It's just kind of nice to know about these elements, especially if you're somebody who has a lot of water, or if you're somebody who has a lot of air, that you might be more influenced by the lunation, which has more of these elements. Now, until the end of the first week of November, Venus is in Libra. This is a great time for getting along with people, for being nice to people, being nice to yourself, understanding your own self-worth. Venus is understanding this exchange of value, as I've said a few times now. And it's not just about love and relationships, although it can be. And with Mars and Venus, both in their own dignity, let's say, for at least the first part of our conversation, it is a nice time for relationships. There is this feeling of luxuriousness and gentleness as we begin this new month. This new moon is interesting because right after the Libra new moon, the sun and moon both enter Scorpio. So it doesn't become a new moon right away until the next month, but we get like a little preview. And we've had that since September, and we're going to have that until February of 2026. We get these double new moons the whole time. So somehow different areas of our life are also going to be activated. And I'm going to be talking about that in the rising sign portion, what to look out for. And the other interesting element of this is that most of the new moons between September until April of next year are around 28 degrees, 27, 28 degrees. So if you have 28 degree planets in your chart, if you have a house cusp at 28 degrees, your ascendant at 28 degrees, this number is quite activated for you. And I suspect a lot of these lunations will then also be stronger than usual. So it is a little bit technical, but I think it's interesting to note that this 28 number is quite important. Right after the Libra new moon on the 21st of October, the 23rd of October, we have sun and moon in Scorpio. We are entering Scorpio season. So it's almost like we're getting into this soft, gentle version of our loving relationship, into this deep, dark, sexy mood. And for those of you who have a lot of Scorpio, you're going to feel this shift in energy very quickly, okay? But we only get that as a preview to what's actually coming into next month. So remember, we're still in Libra season, but we're definitely going to get into that sort of brooding energy very quickly. This month, we also have Mars in Scorpio. This is helpful for making us have very clear, decisive decisions, being strategic, knowing exactly when to do what. However, towards the end of the month of October, our mind might get a little bit muddled. We might not always know exactly what to do. Mercury is kind of irritating Mars in that way, and maybe preventing us from knowing exactly when to strike, from knowing exactly when to hold back. Starting from the first week of November, Mars and Venus also start to change signs. Mars moves into Sagittarius and Venus moves into Scorpio. So this is actually a very nice placement for Mars until the middle of December. We get a lot of enthusiasm, we have motivation, we might be more into our cardiovascular exercises. And with Venus moving into Scorpio, sometimes our decisions around our romantic partners, our lovers, may not be that wise. It might be a lot more fun, but it might not be that wise. So there's some oscillation from the very regal positions of Mars and Venus in the beginning to something like that's more sexy and wild, starting sometime in the beginning of November. This is especially important for you if you are an Aries, Taurus, or Libra, Scorpio rising. When we start November, between the 4th of November to the 11th of November, there is a 7 to 8 day window where a lot of planetary shifts and changes are happening. Many of us will attribute things to the full moon or to Mars moving signs or whatever, but the truth is that so many things are happening all at once that it's going to be difficult to parse them out. So let's review them. As I said, the first week we already have Mars and Venus changing signs. Secondly, Mercury will begin its retrograde starting the 9th of November. That means the few days before we're already starting to shift signs, and the retrograde will begin 6 degrees of Sagittarius. In this period, there's already a kind of like foot and mouth problem. We don't mean what we say things too quickly, we're too blunt, something along those lines. We have also Venus changing signs around that time where she also becomes a little bit more blunt. So our ability to kind of see eye to eye with people weakens. Shortly after that, 2 days later, on the 11th of November, Jupiter, the ruler of Mercury, goes retrograde. Now this is like your child getting sick and then the parent getting sick. Something going wrong with the employee and then the boss also having to leave. There's a little bit of muddled minds going on. So have a little bit of patience in those few days. I've talked about it in my last video. It's a very unusual occurrence where both planets are retrograde and related to each other by rulership. So we have that to contend with. Then we also have a full moon that's happening right in the middle of this on the 5th of November in the sign of Taurus. Now this is a supermoon in Taurus. It's the strongest of the 3 supermoons in October, November, and December, meaning it's the one that's closest to the Earth. And it's in a fixed sign like Taurus, so we know it's going to be strong, it's going to be powerful. And that full moon can also exacerbate just that kind of like crazy energy that you get on a full moon when everyone's out and about and, you know, doing things and trying to finalize and move on their projects and move on their decisions. So have a little patience with that. Luckily, Venus isn't a good sign, but I don't think it's enough to not derail a few things for us. So basically, again, between that 4th to 11th period, we've got one thing after another. Now, in the time of the retrograde, Mercury is going to move between Sagittarius to Scorpio. So it's also going to flip-flop between 2 areas of life, which I will be covering. In that time, it's also making some oppositions to Uranus. So again, there's some unexpected things that might come up, which is different from your usual retrograde. Not that there is ever really a usual retrograde, but in terms of aspects, this is one that's a little bit more difficult to plan for. So just saying that those first 2 weeks of November is going to be a little bit crazy. Although it's not an eclipse season, I do think that so many of the different planetary changes that are happening in November will instigate some change in our lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. One thing that I also forgot to mention is that Uranus is also going back into Taurus around the time that Mercury and Jupiter are also retrograding. This is only going to be important if you have planets in those late degrees of Taurus, and I'm going to be talking about that in the Taurus Rising section. But nonetheless, it's something to consider because it's yet another movement in the planets. So always remember that when planets are changing signs, you're like changing seat. You've been sitting around for a little while, and suddenly you got to get up and your foot has fallen asleep and you need to kind of readjust. And so there's a moment of tension. There's a moment of recalibration. It's a normal part of the process. And with all of these things happening all at once, we're going to have to be a little bit more patient in the month of November. So I will begin talking about the rising signs now. Any questions, please feel free to comment as always. Aries Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October until the 20th of November, which is the Libra new moon. And this new moon starts off about relationships. It's a beautiful time to reach out to people, to meet people, to deepen your existing partnerships, friendships, collaborations, clients, all of the people with whom you have a direct relationship with. It's even a great time to look for a practitioner, another healer, another doctor, someone where it's a trusted professional that you work with, because it's going to invite this beautiful Venusian energy. And that's certainly going to be the case up until around the 7th of November. That week, Venus moves into Scorpio. In this time, Mars is in Sagittarius, Venus is in Scorpio, And that again is quite a sexy time. It's a wild time, it's adventurous and it's romantic, but it's not great for stable relationships. So if I was to advise on when is the best time to really maximize on the relationship piece, it's going to be in that first portion before the 7th of November. You're still in the throes of your personal tidying up. So what I mean by that was your estates and taxes and planning and insurance and all of the things that we all need for a rainy day fund. I mentioned that before, but now it's culminating on the 5th of November on the supermoon in Taurus, which has to do with money for you. So money will still be a front and center theme, as will relationships. This is going to shift gears a little bit because in that first week of November, you may also be inspired to take a trip. Suddenly you want to sort of expand your horizons a little bit. You might have an interest in going to see a teacher. There is something about your own personal development that becomes more of a theme. So it goes from relationship, and then we have a little bit of money, and we also have this desire to think bigger and look at the bigger picture. And that's also going to be exacerbated by the fact that we have Mercury Retrograde happening in the sign of Sagittarius starting from the 9th of November. That first couple of weeks is going to be pretty packed. And although you may have a desire to go on a trip, and you probably already booked one, you want to be mindful of making trips around that time because, again, a lot of volatility, a lot of instability, maybe things don't go exactly as they planned. And this retrograde period is going to be important for you in the sense that you're going to be focusing on your own personal understanding of yourself. Maybe you even realign something about your daily habits. And then from around the 18th of November until the 29th of November, towards the end of the retrograde, this part of the focus is going to be more about your internal world. So you'll notice that you flip-flop between something that's much more external and then something that's much more internal. Again, it depends. Is Mercury being activated in your chart this year? There's so many factors at play to really deduce whether this retrograde is worth really paying attention to. But as always, these are general considerations that you can take a look at your chart and use as experimentation. I also really like this time period if you're a writer. If you want to publish something, the Mercury retrograde is going to give you a lot of inspiration. It's going to give you this desire to really think deeply, to maybe look at something or grapple with an issue that you've been having in a different way. And you might even get some revelations around this time. So blogging, Substacks, social media, all of the things that have to do with sharing information with other people, sharing with your community and your audience, could be a really great time to look more deeply into that and actually take some time to focus on it. Hopefully that was helpful for you. I do mention a lot of transits more specifically in the introduction video. But again, this is really about your relationships and then moving more and more throughout the month back into a better understanding of yourself. Taurus Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, starting with the Libra new moon. Now, this is a Venus-ruled moon. You are a Venus-ruled sign. Venus is in her own sign of Libra. So there's a lot of Venus. There's a lot of self-care. There's a lot of luxuries. There's a lot of relationship themes going on. But it's all happening in the part of your chart that has to do with your daily chores. Some aspect of life is very full right now. You just have a lot on your plate. So it doesn't really feel like you have a lot of time for that Venus, which means that this new moon is an invitation to do something good for yourself and do something that is nurturing for your own health and wellness. Okay, whatever that looks like for you, implement it for this month. The other thing is that contracts or people, clients, negotiations really start to pick up speed as well. And that means that if you're in a business, that you might have great opportunities to meet new people under this transit. And during the full moon on the 5th of November, all of that starts to culminate. You might finalize on a negotiation. It's also a wonderful time where you might feel, you know what, I need a fresh start for something. You know, the eyes are on me. So again, it is a time of busyness in life, but the idea is also to take care of yourself. Now, when the Mercury retrograde begins between the 9th to the 29th of November, the themes of contracts and agreements and negotiations will heighten, especially where management of money or resources or assets where they're shared. So if there are any doubts about money or shared resources or assets or anything like that, then the Mercury retrograde may highlight that. Remember, that's really for the month of November, but that could definitely extend to the rest of the year. Other things that might come up during the Mercury retrograde is unexpected things with your kids, unexpected expenses that you might need to deal with. That month of November, just be prudent about your spending. There'll be things that you didn't want to spend on, or there'll be things that you maybe wanted to spend on yourself, right? So again, it needn't always be so bad, but just to be mindful that there could be some financial themes that come up in the month of November as well. The other important transit for Taurus this month is that we do have Uranus moving back into the sign of Taurus. And this is only really relevant if you have your ascendant degree at 27, 28, 29, or if you have planets at around 27, 28, 29 Taurus. Otherwise, you might not really feel this, but it is in some way the last hurrah before Uranus moves out of Taurus next spring. And it's that time where we can have a eureka moment, a moment of liberation, a time of change. So quite exciting period for Taurus rising, but only specifically to those degrees. For Taurus Sun, the supermoon will really light up your life if you are born around the 3rd of May. Again, not all Tauruses are going to feel this, but it's definitely a moment of renewal. It's like your own mini birthday. You can treat it as that. And as for Uranus moving back into Taurus, this is going to be most pronounced for those born at the end of Taurus around the 19th and 20th of May. Not all Taurus Sun is going to have this eureka moment, but for the rest of the period that Uranus is in Taurus until spring of 2026, there may be moments of instability, there may be moments of a little bit of personal chaos in order to liberate yourself and to really get to the true pinnacle of who you are. Gemini Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, starting with the Libra new moon. And actually, this is a wonderful time for focusing on your passions, the thing that inspires you, that really allows you to show up consistently as yourself. And it may be surprising to hear that because you're probably very busy right now. Probably a lot of things on your plate, needing to sort of firefight and handle a lot of tasks that don't feel particularly inspiring. But nonetheless, that is one of the themes of this month. And so having that in the back of your mind is helpful and is important, especially because on the 5th of November, when we have the big supermoon in Taurus, you may really feel like you need to take some time off and sort of get away from everything, but that might not be possible given all of the attention that life currently requires. The other element is that we have Mercury stationing retrograde on the 9th of November in the sign of Sagittarius, which has to do with your partnerships and contracts, and it's going to indicate that beginning stages of themes related to people, to contracts, to agreements, clients, partnerships, up until the 29th of November, but also into the rest of the year. And we'll be flip-flopping back between busyness in day as well as people that you have to deal with. So I expect this rest of the year to be quite full for you. And during this time, it is important to watch what kind of contracts you sign with people, the kind of people that might come into your life, sort of being a little bit more mindful of the decisions that you take on, especially because you might be inclined to make those decisions quickly. You may also be inclined to speak quickly and speak before you think, and that might also be the case for other people around you. So not to take offense around that as well. The other part about the retrograde is that if you are 24, 36, 48, or 60 years old this year, Mercury is much stronger as a planet for you. So this retrograde might be even stronger. And it's quite interesting to experiment with some of these years in which the retrogrades are more impactful than others, because as we know, we have retrogrades throughout the year and they're not always that important. The key dates to know for Mercury retrograde more specifically is going to be between the 9th to the 20th when Mercury is in Sagittarius, and from the 20th to the 30th when Mercury goes into Scorpio. So again, those are the specific retrograde dates. You can mark them in the calendar if you think that is going to be helpful for you. But those are the dates in which you might feel the effects of the retrograde more, either in relationships when it's Sagittarius, and then also just the busyness of life when it's in Scorpio. You can also look back to the end of 2012 when we had a Mercury retrograde between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Again, it's not exactly the same degrees and a lot of the planets are different, but if you find that you had very big learnings around that time, it's always nice to know what's ahead of you and what you can keep in mind. And for Gemini Sun, if you are born at around the 27th of May, so quite specific Gemini, you may find that this Mercury retrograde is stronger. It may also bring about some revelations. It might bring around some wonderful business ideas, but you also want to kind of manage that closely, because after all, it's a retrograde and we don't want to sort of just run into it, which we would have the habit of doing when Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius. So enjoy the month, and don't forget that the underpinning of this month is still, what is your greatest inspiration? Cancer Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October until the 20th of November. And this is starting from the Libra new moon, which has all to do with spring cleaning. It has to do with emotional cleansing. It has to do with physically cleansing your home, whether you're redecorating, whether it is that you're moving home. But that is where the centerpiece of this month will go. And you already had a little bit of hint of that when we had the equinox, and that was also highlighting this area of life. But now things are kind of in full force. At the same time, you've also been in a creative spell, a lot of focus on the things that you desire. And that's all going to be the case until we hit the first week of November. Things will start to change around that time. First of all, we're going to have that big supermoon on the 5th of November. This is going to be like a culmination of the things that you're passionate about, and maybe you want to spread that message. Maybe you want to get together with a group of friends. You're going to think big. You're going to have some opportunities to really dream. And it's a nice thing to do, especially like once you clean your house, you have also this clarity of mind, right? So I would encourage you to use the start of this new moon to clean your house so that you can really take advantage of the full moon, which has to do with your bigger ideas. Then we move into the retrograde. And the retrograde period, especially the 9th to the 11th, will be much more of a time where, okay, suddenly life is very busy. You have to take care of administration of life. Things day to day get occupied, and you don't have the space to really think more laterally as you would have liked at the start of this period. And as Jupiter goes retrograde until next spring, maybe some of the things that you're working on in terms of your new identity or your new ambitions, they may slow down, okay? But no panic, it's just a period of time. And in fact, the retrograde time will be an important period of really reassessing what isn't working for you in your day-to-day affairs. So on the one hand, you may just look at something simple like your health. Like maybe I just need to do that fascial release technique that can really help me with my spine or my sciatica. Or it's just a matter of really getting your priorities straight. And there will be a period of time towards the end of November where some of that creative juice starts to flow again. But for now, the retrograde period would largely be around, okay, my day-to-day life is busy and I need to get a handle on that. This retrograde time will be a moment where you can get a handle of what your mission statement is. And that's where that prioritization will come up again. Cancer Sun, if you are born at around July 16th to 18th, then you may feel this Jupiter retrograde more so. Again, this retrograde period will be around the 11th of November. And in this time, you will reassess what it is that you feel purposeful about. It can also be a time where you also want to reassess something about your health. Now, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer is really not so bad because it's such a great place for this planet to be in. So it's really about this loving compassion that you can show for yourself. Do something good for yourself. And I don't mean eat a bunch of chocolate. I mean actually do something good for yourself. Nourish your body in the correct way. Use this Jupiter retrograde as a moment to go inwards and really observe what it is that your body and your soul needs in order to come back out again next spring. Leo Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October until the 20th of November, starting from the Libra new moon. And this one is all about your curiosity, your peers, your willingness to kind of go above and beyond and make an effort in the things that you're doing. So that's one of the sort of sub-themes that is taking place. And the other theme that you might find is this idea of home. So you're linking these two together. You get a preview of the fact that you're going to be focusing a lot more on home next month, but you get a little preview of that from the 23rd to the 25th of October. It's like we have two new moons, two themes, one after the other. The next big date after that is going to be the full moon or the supermoon in Taurus on the 5th of November. And this one, you may feel really called, inspired to really think about what it is that aligns with your personal philosophy and your professional identity. So there's suddenly this interest in maybe exploring some new topics or maybe going deeper with some subject matter that already interested you. Again, this idea of curiosity is being one of the main underpinnings of this month. I would also like to say that this is a period in which so much work is being done internally that a lot of people don't really see. which might be unusual because Leo rising is used to being more public facing, at least for the most part. So in this time, and certainly at least until the end of the year, there's still a lot of internal work being done, regardless of whether or not you continue to have your profession and you continue to have your external identity. And this is very much pronounced this month and next month. There will be also a great number of changes during the first 2 weeks of November, as I've already mentioned in my introduction. But one of those things is this Mercury retrograde starting from the 9th to the 29th of November. And it's going to flip-flop between two areas of life. One in which you are going to be inspired and wanting to dig deeper into some of the things that you are working on. And the other is this idea of home. Maybe some matters that you have to deal with in the family life, maybe some things that you're kind of ruminating on that needs to be looked at. And it doesn't even necessarily have to do with a specific family member. It could just be a concept that you're working through. So the Mercury retrograde is going to sort of dredge that up a little bit more. Virgo Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November. And this is the Libra new moon. Now we are coming off of the eclipse season in your sign. So hopefully the intensity is subsiding. And we're moving swiftly into the Libra new moon, which has a beautiful Venus. It's highlighting your house of money and finances. So I hope that that means a big fat paycheck, a big focus on money, and what it is that you want to bring in. So this can also be a time where you decide that something that you're doing is not working for you financially and you need to let that go. And so you can use this new moon as a way to housekeep and realign where you want to focus your priorities financially. The other important time period is going to be the Mercury retrograde, because of course you are a mercurial sign, and the retrograde is going to be between the 9th to the 29th of November. Now this is highlighting your inner sanctum. So you're going to be oscillating between being busy with your family, maybe some of the emotional things that you're working through, your home and physical property as well, and also needing to spend time with friends, maybe running around, kind of wearing a few hats. And I know that you're already used to doing that, but this retrograde is definitely going to exacerbate that feeling. And especially since after the first week of November until mid-December, home is going to be more of a focus. If you're looking for property, you might be feeling more motivated around that time. Although you want to be careful, of course, because Mercury is retrograding. And so now's maybe a time to look, but think before you buy. Now, Mercury retrograde will also be important for you if you are 21 or 24, 33 or 36, 45 or 48, and 57 or 60. In those years, Mercury retrogrades are going to be more pronounced. Again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it is something that gives a little bit nuance, and it's something to experiment with if you are interested in it. Lastly, we have a full moon in Taurus, a supermoon, that's highlighting some of the bigger aspirations that you have. And it might be even just taking a trip, going on a big journey. And it needn't be you going on a journey in that specific time, but you might be inspired to plan around that period. It feels a little bit different to everything else that's going on in your chart, where you're kind of managing life a little bit. But the full moon might be a really nice opportunity to kind of step outside of that and think, you know what is it that I want to do for myself? Libra Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November. And this is, of course, the Libra new moon. So in many ways, this is a new beginning for you. This is a new start, a fresh start, and an opportunity to shed. And the reason I'm using the word shed is because the Libra new moon is at 28 degrees of Libra, which is the end of the sign. And at the end of the sign, we are somehow letting go of something in order to make room for something new. So we had this initial preview on the 22nd of September with the equinox, where you did kind of have a little mini new moon, but maybe back then you weren't that motivated. Venus is now in a much more powerful sign, which will enable you to move forward and really kind of take that next step to bring out the new you. Once we start moving into the month, we're also adding on new layers of themes. The first is expenses and money and income. So you're going to start to be focused on money management, what money's coming in, what money's going out. All of these themes are going to become more important, especially as we move into that big supermoon on the 5th of November, which is highlighting money that you manage or money that you share with other people, whether it's a business partner, whether it's a romantic partner, whether it's an asset. These things will start to become more of a focal point. And it doesn't need to be an argument over money. It could be just something that you realize, you know what, I need to invest more here, or I need to save more, or I need to put this in a different bucket. So no need to put your mind into such a negative state right away, but know that it is definitely going to be a theme. And the other theme is also, how does it relate to your sense of self-worth? Am I charging enough? Am I charging too much? These things are all going to be related during this full moon time. Now, as we move into the Mercury Retrograde, which will be from the 9th to the 29th of November, we also start to see a greater focus on things like writing, of skill building, of really putting effort into something that means something to you. A greater sense of competition is required here. There will be lots of things on your plate. And at the same time, you can use this retrograde to consider the effort that I'm making right now, whether it's writing, publishing, researching, or anything that you need to do in terms of building your skills to work. How is that relating to my professional ambitions and my professional aspirations, because this year is professionally oriented, and how does that relate to the money I'm making? I believe these three things are going to need to triangulate for you. And the retrograde will be a time of thinking through these things. Now, towards the end of the month of November, I think that there could be some snafus around finances and maybe some difficulties there. So have some patience, be extra careful with your mathematics and accounting, let's say. But otherwise, understand that this Mercury retrograde is in fact here as an opportunity to help you delve into the main theme of this month, which is that the Libra new moon is about your rejuvenation and your regeneration as a new individual. And one last thing, when Jupiter starts to retrograde in the beginning of November, and maybe some things professionally start to pull back, this is not a time to panic. It's just a moment of needing to maybe go more inwards during the time of the retrograde to analyze and to assess what is it that I need to move forward with my professional ambitions. And after next spring, there may be also a fresh new wave of opportunities for you. Libra Sun. Now, of course, this is Libra season, and it's Libra season until the 23rd of October. However, if your birthday is actually falling on the 21st of October, which is the Libra new moon, then you get kind of like a fresh start that is pervasive for the entire year. And that area of your life, whatever you feel is your purpose and your direction, is going to get an extra boost because you're either letting something go or you're starting something fresh. Now, again, this is very general, but is something kind of nice to note, that having that new moon feeling on your birthday is a type of rebirth in some way. Scorpio Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, covering the Libra new moon. And we're really in an interesting place here because on the one hand, the Libra new moon is all about your personal spiritual quest and your internal world. Maybe you want to go to a faraway place and reconnect with yourself internally. But on the other hand, you've been having a really busy month, and that hasn't really been possible. So you're sort of juggling these two things at the same time. And around the 23rd and 24th of October, you're also going to have another mini new moon in the sign of Scorpio. So there is some type of personal metamorphosis going on, and it's making for a very busy month. This whole thing also culminates around the 5th of November when we have a big supermoon. It's about clients, it's about people, it's about your public. So you can expect to be quite busy around that time. And the themes of the new moon, which is about this personal self-realization, doesn't get a lot of attention, okay, at least not initially. Then we move swiftly into this period where you start focusing on money after the first week of November. And the Mercury retrograde, which lasts between 9th to the 29th of November, will also be focused on this. So this is about your income streams. This is about the responsibilities that you have for whatever it is that you have in your life. There could be some confusion around it. Maybe you feel like you need to revamp the way that you make money, and you are reassessing exactly what your game plan and what your strategy there is. And there could be a lot of back and forth because that's just the nature of the retrograde. The money piece will be an increasing focus throughout the month of November. Towards the end, though, from the 20th to the end of the month, you'll start to shift your focus into maybe more about what you want out of life. What is it that you identify with? And it will kind of put you in this more scorpionic or witchy state. You might be more highly attuned to certain things. Certain messages might become more clear. So there will be a slight shift in this Mercury retrograde. It's not just going to be about money. It will go back into your sense of self towards the end of November. And we will be speaking more about that in next month's video. Sagittarius Rising, these are predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November. And this is the Libra new moon, 28 degrees of Libra, really highlighting your big visions and your goals. So I think this is a wonderful time to think big. It is a great time to expand your community and your network and talk to lots of different kinds of people. You're probably already naturally pretty good at that, chart depending, but it's one in which that should be encouraged. So that's one of the main themes this month. The other theme is that starting from around the first week of November until mid-December, you also get a lot of boost of motivation, of physical energy. You might want to work out more, you want to get out more, hiking, walking, cardio. So there's also this sort of heaty energy that motivates you to activate all of those dreams and revelations that you might be having with this Libra new moon. And on top of that, the Mercury retrograde will also add some fuel to the fire. So this retrograde starts from the 9th to the 29th of November, but the themes of the retrograde will be present for most of the rest of the year. So even though it might be really concentrated in the month of November, I think you'll still be sorting out all of the things that you've been working on in this month into December. Now, what that looks like is once the retrograde begins, since it's in the sign of Sagittarius, this is a great time where you're tapping into your own wisdom, you're learning new skills, new languages, meeting people, partners, clients, associates, new professional opportunities might come around, and you're starting to kind of weigh things up. And it may not be necessarily that those ideas are great. It may not be necessarily that those people are great, but certainly there's going to be a lot of people in the pot. The only thing is not to overcommit yourself, because it's going to be such a busy time, because you're going to be so motivated, and because you're going to be so excited. So that's the only thing that I would maybe caution about the retrograde period. And of course, with Mars and Mercury together in Sagittarius, just being careful, like when you're running around, you look where you're going, okay? Towards the end of the month, towards the end of November, you will start to retract a little bit. Some of that wisdom will be more about inner wisdom, getting away to just recalibrate with everything that's been going on, even though it's going to continue to be a busy time, even though you're going to continue to be feeling motivated. So these are some of the nice points that are happening for you this month. That period when the planets first start going retrograde between the 9th to the 11th of November, things can be a little bit wobbly there. So whatever commitments that you have around that time, you hold them loosely. Don't be surprised if your plans change. You will have to be more flexible. Maybe you're the one that wants to have that change of heart. If you are a Sagittarius Sun, two major aspects happening with Mars moving into Sagittarius until mid-December. You're going to have an opportunity to also get a boost of motivation for yourself in terms of what inspires you and what drives you. This is a great time to act on those things. And secondly, the retrograde itself will mostly affect people who are born at the end of November. So it's not going to be for everybody. And it's really when Mercury starts going retrograde around that 7th to 9th of November. So again, very specific. In that time, you may also experience some similar inner wisdom, wonderful time for meditation, for practices that allow you to center yourself and allow you to really identify what is that thing that drives you and that motivates you and that you feel is very authentic to you. Capricorn Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, covering the Libra new moon. And this Libra new moon is all about your career direction, your professional ambitions. You had a little bit of a hint of that back in September on the equinox, 22nd of September, but things weren't really that motivated then. So this is that final opportunity to look at this for this year. Now, this year you have a lot of opportunities to meet people, so putting yourself out there could give you a lot of benefit and give you a lot of new ideas, let's say. But this new moon is allowing you to use this month to think about your professional ambitions. And also up until around the 4th of November, you may be motivated to meet a lot of people. You might actually be able to access a wider network of people. Now, once the full moon happens on the 5th of November, this is highlighting the place that you're most passionate about. So rather than using this full moon as a way to just go out and party, use it as a means to better identify what you're passionate about in terms of your professional identity. This is, of course, if this is a real focus. Now, maybe you do just need to let off some steam because you've been working so hard, okay? This could also be another iteration of that. But what I'm saying is, if there are some things to be dealt with in that professional realm, try and link it back to the things that you're passionate about and try to put yourself in a place where you're assessing some of the topics that you love. Then once we move into the Mercury retrograde, which begins on the 9th and ends on the 29th, there may be periods in which you're going to have a lot more internal dialogue. And that internal dialogue can cause some anxiety. So this month and this year in general, which is about practicing good mental habits, will be about releasing some of that. During the time of the retrograde, getting back into your spiritual practices, getting back into the practices that allow you to ground and to keep focused. So for example, meditation, for example, journaling, automatic writing. You may even need to do something more physical, like an exercise or movement or whatever it is that allows you to get back into your body, because the Mercury retrograde is happening in quite a physical sign, and this kind of physical work might allow you to sort of access some of the anxieties that you might have during the retrograde. So again, it's not horrendous, this retrograde. It is a time where you're going to have some moments of wanting to get back into your deeper self. And you may even want to take a big trip. You might be inspired around the first week of November and into the middle of December, where you want to take a sabbatical. Maybe you need to take some time away. Maybe you need to spend some time in a more spiritual setting, or in a setting that allows you to access something deeper with yourself in order to support your professional endeavors. I don't know, I'm just handing out some ideas for you, but in a sense, the underpinning of this month is that new moon in your professional world. However, there's going to be some things that take you away from that, and you've got to learn how to keep focused both mentally and emotionally in order not to let it overwhelm you. This is still a wonderful year for great opportunities, and there's plenty of time to capitalize on that. Aquarius Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, starting from the Libra new moon. And this is a new moon that has to do with highlighting your desire for absorbing knowledge, for exploring, for really understanding who you are. But you don't really have a chance to do that right now because things are probably quite busy for you professionally. You also will get a hint of how things will be professionally for you in the next few days after the 23rd of October. Around that period, you get like a mini new moon. So that time will also be busy for work, and there'll be some indicators of what's going to happen in the month ahead. However, once we begin the retrograde from the 9th to the 29th of November, there will be some opportunities for greater daydreaming. There will be some space in your mind for thinking about what are your bigger hopes and dreams and visions for the future. And you should definitely use this month to do that. This is going to continue until the rest of the year, but it might just be extra highlighted during the time of the retrograde between that 9th to the 29th of November, but definitely between the 9th to the 20th. Okay. This is also an important year for you if you are 28, 40, 52, and 64 years old, where the idea of what it is that's you're passionate about is really important. So you can use this Mercury retrograde as an opportunity to really deep dive and give yourself the permission to do that. After the 4th of November, you will also have an opportunity to spend more time with people and communities and different networks that inspire you and that motivate you. So if there is an area that you are particularly interested in, that period will be a great time to go forth and explore and meet people and see whether you're truly interested in that in a practical way. Now, the full moon around the 5th of November is going to pull you in these two opposite directions. Like you're super busy with work and you're super busy at home, or you're trying to figure out some aspect of both of them. But I think you're going to choose the work element actually, because that's where most of that focus is for you this year. Lastly, in those first 2 weeks of November, you may also take a pause and decide, listen, I want to really reevaluate some of the more practical systems in my life, whether that's connecting to yourself spiritually, whether that's figuring out like, okay, you know what, I haven't had a health checkup in a little while, so let me go and organize that. So getting out of that only dream state, but also trying to address some of the more practical matters at hand. So have a great month ahead, and definitely want to keep your journal handy for all those wonderful ideas that I'm sure will come about. Pisces Rising, these are your predictions from the 21st of October to the 20th of November, starting from the Libra new moon. And this new moon is about your own personal metamorphosis. It's about deepening your relationship to yourself and to others. So in this sense, it is a time to protect your mental and emotional health, but it's also a period in which you may deepen your relationship to people around you, to partners, to anybody with whom you have an intimate relationship with. So when I say metamorphosis and transformation, I don't necessarily mean it as you're going to break up and have to transform. Okay. Remember that Venus is actually doing very well here, and so maybe there is a time for compassion for yourself. In this period, you may have also taken a trip, been expanding your horizon up until that first week of November, where you're really starting to understand, okay, what is the relationship between the things that I'm learning and the things that I'm going towards and my own personal sense of self? Because that is one of the key themes of this year. You know, what drives you? What makes you you? And we start to shift gears again in the first week of November. At this point, you may be starting to think about work. You might start to be thinking about not work as in just your daily work, but really what your career ambitions are, right? You've been undergoing this personal transformation in much of these last couple of years, and it's naturally to start thinking about all the other pillars of life. And during this retrograde period, that might start to become even more of a topic for you, something that you really want to start to get clear on. The retrograde will be from the 9th to the 29th, but the themes of the retrograde will of course persist until the end of the year. So don't worry about needing to figure everything out in the month that we're discussing now. Now, during the retrograde, there could be some back and forth with negotiations, with contracts, anything to do with housing, professional realm, and also partnerships. Where partnerships are concerned, old people might come back into your life. And of course, this is a renewed invitation to rethink what it is that you would really like out of these partnerships, what it is that you would really like out of these relationships. So making some clear decisions then. The 5th of November is a really big full moon, a supermoon in Taurus. It's highlighting maybe a road trip, maybe an opportunity to go out and meet up with some friends. So there's something kind of fun and enjoyable about this period. As much as this month does have this undercurrent of like personal metamorphosis and personal transformation, I do think that there's a great time to, you know, do something that's fun and interesting for you, something that's quite pleasurable around that 5th of November full moon. Bearing in mind that if you do have a trip planned, that you do either want to have some patience or having that trip well planned and allow for some wiggle room.